Forgotten sleep pattern before electricity. First and second sleep revealed white heavy check mark. Imagine a time before electricity, when people didn't sleep through the night like we do. Instead, they had two distinct sleeps, a first sleep, a wakeful period in the middle of the night, and then a second sleep. During this quiet, mysterious hour, people would pray, reflect, write letters, tend fires, or even create art, all while the rest of the world slept. What if I told you that our ancestors' sleep rhythm was healthier, more creative, and even better for emotional balance than the solid 8 hours we chase today? Modern science is now confirming what history already knew. Waking in the middle of the night wasn't a problem. It was a natural, restorative, and deeply human rhythm. In this video, we're uncovering the forgotten secrets of first and second sleep, exploring why it disappeared, and how you could even experiment with it today to sleep better, think clearer, and feel more alive. You won't believe how your nights could change once you reconnect with this lost rhythm. The Industrial Revolution marked a profound turning point in human sleep patterns. Beginning in the late 18th century and accelerating through the 19th, the rise of mechanized labor, factories, and artificial lighting reshaped daily life in ways that slowly eroded the centuries-old practice of first and second sleep. For centuries, people had lived in harmony with natural light and darkness, rising and retiring in accordance with the sun, the seasons, and the demands of agriculture and household labor. Now, the rhythms of human life were increasingly dictated by clocks, factory bells, and the glow of artificial illumination. Factories and industrial workplaces operated on strict schedules, often beginning work before dawn and continuing well into the evening. For laborers, particularly in urban centers, this meant that the natural timing of first and second sleep was disrupted. Workers needed to maintain extended wakefulness to meet the demands of early shifts or night shifts, leaving less time for the middle-of-the-night wakeful interval, and reducing the restorative benefits traditionally afforded by dual sleep. In some cases, laborers slept in a single consolidated period, though the quality of this sleep was often compromised by fatigue, noise, and overcrowded living conditions. Artificial light played a central role in this transformation. Gas lamps in streets and homes, and later electric lighting, extended the hours during which people could work, socialize, and read. Whereas candlelight and oil lamps had limited the duration of night activity, brighter and more reliable light allowed society to operate around the clock. This new flexibility encouraged late-night activity and gradually shortened or eliminated the middle-of-the-night interlude, shifting cultural expectations toward a single, uninterrupted period of sleep. Urbanization compounded these changes. As towns grew into bustling cities, the noise, crowding, and constant activity of city life disrupted traditional sleep rhythms. Streets were illuminated at night, markets and social venues remained open later, and families adapted to the fast-paced urban environment by consolidating sleep to match work schedules rather than the natural cycle of night and day. Rural areas maintained dual sleep longer, but urban life increasingly favored continuous activity and longer daytime labor, gradually normalizing uninterrupted sleep. Cultural expectations began to change as well. Literature, newspapers, and public discourse of the 19th century reflect a growing emphasis on productivity and efficiency. Waking during the night, once a natural and expected interval, came to be viewed as inefficient or unnecessary. Middle-of-the-night wakefulness became associated with insomnia rather than a routine biological cycle, and medical and social authorities increasingly encouraged consolidated sleep. The dual sleep pattern, once embedded in daily life, slowly lost its social validation. Even domestic routines were affected. Household chores that had traditionally been spread across the evening and night were now compressed into daylight hours. Women, once accustomed to waking between first and second sleep to care for children or tend fires, now structured their activity to align with the family's new sleep schedule. Children, too, followed consolidated sleep, reinforced by urban schooling schedules and the demands of modern life. Despite these pressures, remnants of first and second sleep persisted into the early 20th century, particularly in rural communities and among older generations. Diaries and letters from this era occasionally describe waking in the middle of the night, tending fires, or reflecting quietly before returning to bed. Yet the cultural and economic forces of industrial society steadily marginalized these practices, privileging continuous sleep as a marker of modernity, productivity, and efficiency. Health considerations also influenced the transition. Physicians and sleep researchers began to observe that uninterrupted sleep aligned with the demands of industrial society, improving performance during long workdays. Public health campaigns and advice manuals encouraged consolidated sleep, discouraging the traditional nocturnal wakeful interval. Over time, what had once been a natural and restorative practice became framed as a relic of the past, replaced by a sleep pattern optimized for a rapidly changing world. Entertainment and leisure habits further reinforced the decline of dual sleep. Theaters, cafes, and social venues extended activity into the evening, often closing late at night, while the advent of newspapers and serialized novels encouraged reading after dinner rather than during a middle-of-the-night interlude. Music, lectures, and social gatherings extended the awake period, while the pressures of industrial work demanded that sleep be consolidated to maximize rest before early morning labor. The decline of first and second sleep was not uniform, however. Seasonal variation, rural versus urban environment, and cultural factors delayed the adoption of consolidated sleep in some areas. Winter months, long nights, and agricultural schedules continued to encourage middle-of-the-night wakefulness in rural regions, while urban dwellers adapted more quickly to extended nighttime activity and consolidated sleep. In this sense, the transition from dual sleep to single sleep was gradual and uneven, reflecting a complex interplay of technology, economics, culture, and biology. By the early 20th century, first and second sleep had largely disappeared from mainstream society, remembered only in literary accounts, medical observations, and folklore. The rise of electric lighting, modern work schedules, and urban lifestyles cemented uninterrupted sleep as the cultural norm, fundamentally reshaping how humans experienced night, darkness, and rest. What had been a natural, healthful, and socially integrated rhythm became a curiosity, a lost art of human life before electricity and industrial modernization. While the Industrial Revolution and artificial light reshaped societal expectations, the lived experience of first and second sleep is preserved in countless diaries, letters, and literary accounts. These personal records offer a rare glimpse into how ordinary people experienced the rhythm of divided sleep, demonstrating that it was not only biologically adaptive but also culturally rich, emotionally resonant, and socially meaningful. One of the most revealing sources comes from English diarists of the 17th and 18th centuries. Samuel Pepys, whose meticulous journal chronicles daily life in London, occasionally notes waking in the middle of the night. His entries do not suggest distress or insomnia. Instead, he treats these hours as ordinary and purposeful. In some cases, He writes of waking after first sleep to perform quiet tasks, attend to correspondence, or reflect on the events of the day. These accounts reinforce the notion that middle-of-the-night wakefulness was a normal aspect of life, expected and integrated into the daily routine rather than anomalous. Other diarists provide insight into the domestic aspects of dual sleep. Women, often responsible for childcare and household management, describe waking to feed infants, check fires, or ensure the comfort and safety of family members. Their narratives reveal a rhythm of care that aligned with both the biological need for rest and the social and domestic obligations of the household. The interlude between first and second sleep was thus not wasted time. It was an active, purposeful span during which essential domestic labor was completed. Religious reflection was another common theme in personal accounts. Many diarists, clergy and laypeople describe waking for prayer, meditation, or study of sacred texts. This period of wakefulness was seen as spiritually significant, a liminal time when contemplation was uninterrupted and the mind could focus without distraction. The timing of such practices, occurring after first sleep and before returning to second sleep, underscores the integration of spiritual life into the structure of nocturnal rest. Letters between family members and friends also shed light on social and cultural aspects of dual sleep. In some cases, individuals would wake during the night to write notes, letters, or instructions for household members, taking advantage of the quiet and privacy of these hours. These letters reveal a society in which middle-of-the-night activity was routine, valued, and respected, and in which the interlude between sleeps facilitated communication and reflection. Literary accounts, both fiction and nonfiction, provide additional insight. Writers such as Robert Burton in The Anatomy of Melancholy reference waking in the middle of the night, interpreting the interval as a natural and even beneficial aspect of human life. Poets, essayists, and chroniclers often frame these hours as conducive to introspection, creativity, and insight. In some narratives, first sleep and second sleep serve as a metaphor for the rhythm of life itself, reflecting cycles of rest, reflection, and renewal. The lived experience of dual sleep also included dreams, which were given particular attention during this period. Dream journals, letters, and anecdotal accounts describe people recording or interpreting dreams during the wakeful interval. These dreams were seen as meaningful, potentially prophetic, and sometimes indicative of health or fortune. Families consulted one another or local advisors for guidance, demonstrating that first and second sleep was not only physiological but embedded in cultural practice, ritual, and community knowledge. In rural areas, diaries and oral histories describe how the middle-of-the-night wakefulness facilitated household and agricultural management. Farmers would rise to check livestock, inspect stored crops, or prepare tools for early morning work. Women would attend to fires, mend clothing, or care for children. These records reveal that the interlude between first and second sleep was both practical and necessary, a time during which the household maintained efficiency, safety, and order. Even in urban contexts, diaries capture how people navigated the dual sleep rhythm. City dwellers, merchants, and professionals often used the wakeful interval to engage in quiet intellectual or creative pursuits. Letters, journals, and memoirs from this period frequently note reading, writing, or planning during the middle-of-the-night hours. The combination of personal reflection, productivity, and quiet solitude demonstrates that first and second sleep was deeply integrated into human life, offering a structured space for both rest and meaningful activity. Historical accounts from various regions also show that dual sleep was remarkably consistent across social classes, though the experience varied in detail. Wealthier households might extend wakefulness with candlelight, engaging in reading, music, or conversation, while poorer families were more constrained by limited illumination and relied more on the natural cycle of darkness. Yet in all cases, the interlude between first and second sleep was an expected and valued part of the night. The narratives preserved in diaries, letters, and literary works also highlight the emotional and psychological dimensions of dual sleep. Waking in the middle of the night provided space for contemplation, introspection, and problem-solving. It allowed for emotional processing of the day's events, planning for the day ahead, and moments of quiet reflection that were impossible during the busyness of daylight hours. First and second sleep thus functioned not only as a biological necessity, but also as a psychological and cultural resource. By examining these personal narratives, it becomes clear that first and second sleep was more than a historical curiosity. It was a lived experience, a social and cultural institution, and a deeply human practice. Individuals, families, and communities used these hours to care for each other, maintain households, reflect spiritually, engage intellectually, and preserve cultural knowledge. The transition away from dual sleep with industrialization and artificial light represented not only a biological adjustment, but also a profound cultural shift. Communal life in pre-electric societies was closely intertwined with the rhythms of dual sleep. The night was not merely a personal or household affair. It was a shared temporal space shaped by the village, the town, and the wider community. Marketplaces, festivals, and social gatherings influenced the timing and character of first and second sleep, embedding the practice deeply within the cultural fabric of the era. In towns and villages, markets often began early in the morning and could continue late into the day, requiring both merchants and customers to align their sleep schedules with these economic activities. Artisans and farmers would rise with the first light to prepare goods and livestock, while in the evening, the quiet hours after first sleep allowed merchants to tally accounts, repair goods, or make preparations for the next day. The dual sleep pattern offered a natural rhythm that harmonized economic responsibilities with physical rest, ensuring that essential tasks were completed while preserving health and vitality. Social obligations also played a significant role. Weddings, religious festivals, and seasonal fairs often dictated modifications to normal sleep patterns. During these occasions, the boundaries between first and second sleep could be blurred, with people remaining awake for communal celebrations or traveling long distances to participate in regional gatherings. Yet even in these cases, the structure of dual sleep remained embedded in people's consciousness. Those who attended nighttime festivities often took advantage of quiet periods afterward to return to second sleep, demonstrating the resilience of the natural rhythm even amidst social demands. Religious observances frequently shaped nocturnal activity on both individual and communal levels. Churches, chapels, and monasteries organized vigils, late-night prayers, and other rituals that coincided with the wakeful period between first and second sleep. Parishioners, influenced by these practices, would rise during the night for prayer or contemplation, reinforcing social cohesion and spiritual discipline. In rural areas, the communal observance of these rituals strengthened the link between cultural life and the nocturnal cycle, showing that dual sleep was not only biologically adaptive, but also socially meaningful. In addition, communal work and cooperative labor extended into the hours of wakefulness between sleeps. Farmers might coordinate livestock management with neighbors, repairing fences or guarding crops against theft or predation. Tradespeople could work together on shared projects, such as constructing barns, mills, or bridges, taking advantage of the quiet and stillness of night. Even small villages relied on mutual assistance during the night, making the interlude between first and second sleep a time for cooperative effort that strengthened community bonds. Markets and night fairs were sometimes held during the wakeful hours of the night, especially in warmer months. Merchants and performers took advantage of the calm and privacy of nighttime to conduct business or entertain, while patrons engaged in commerce or social exchange. These gatherings were often modest in scale but culturally significant, offering a venue for news, storytelling, and communal decision-making. First and second sleep provided a framework, allowing participants to rest sufficiently while still participating in social and economic life. Children and youth experienced these social patterns differently from adults. While their sleep often mirrored the household's rhythm, festivals and communal events could lead to short-term adjustments. Storytelling, music, and play were central to nocturnal entertainment, reinforcing cultural values and collective memory. Parents and elders monitored these activities carefully, balancing the need for rest with the social and educational opportunities presented by nighttime wakefulness. The wakeful period also fostered personal reflection and creativity. Artists, musicians, and writers found inspiration in the quiet hours, free from the interruptions of daily labor. Composers might experiment with melodies by candlelight, while poets and diarists recorded thoughts and experiences from both day and night. This creative interlude was culturally recognized, as evidenced by references in literature, personal journals, and letters. Nighttime wakefulness was thus not only practical and social, but also an incubator for imagination and intellectual activity. Even travel was shaped by the dual sleep rhythm. Travelers journeyed by foot, horse, or carriage would align their sleep patterns with natural cues, resting in inns or village homes during first sleep, waking to attend to personal or logistical needs, and resuming sleep until sunrise. Travel during festivals or market days required careful planning, demonstrating how the dual sleep pattern influenced broader social and economic mobility. The structure of nighttime life reinforced social hierarchy and responsibility. Elders often guided the household's rhythm, ensuring that young children and servants observed first and second sleep appropriately. In larger households or estates, the wakeful period allowed staff to perform necessary chores quietly, from tending fires to preparing meals, without disturbing the rest of the family. In this way, dual sleep was embedded not only in individual biology, but also in social organization, defining roles, responsibilities, and relationships within households and communities. Health practices continued to intersect with social life. Herbal remedies, evening exercises, and light chores performed during the middle of the night wakefulness were socially observed and often guided by local customs or professional advice. The quiet hours were considered optimal for these activities, as they balanced physical needs with communal expectations. People did not challenge the rhythm of dual sleep. Instead, they adapted social, religious, and economic life to accommodate it. In rural landscapes, the natural environment further shaped nocturnal behavior. Village life was attuned to the sounds and signs of night. The calls of nocturnal birds, the movements of livestock, or the distant howl of wolves or foxes. Community members shared responsibility for safety, using wakeful hours to patrol, observe, and act if necessary. The interlude between first and second sleep thus became a space of vigilance and communal care, blending rest with action, quiet reflection with practical engagement. By examining marketplaces, festivals, communal labor, and social structures, it becomes evident that first and second sleep was far more than a private matter. It was an institution, influencing how society organized itself, how families and communities functioned, and how cultural and economic life unfolded. The night was alive with purpose, creativity, and responsibility. And the dual sleep pattern provided the framework for balancing all these elements. The rhythm of first and second sleep persisted for centuries, guided by natural light, labor demands, and social customs. Yet as human ingenuity introduced new technologies, the nocturnal landscape began to shift. Even before the widespread arrival of electricity, innovations in lighting, timekeeping, and household devices gradually transformed how people experienced night, wakefulness, and sleep. Candles, the most common source of indoor illumination, had been used for centuries, but their limitations were significant. Made of tallow or beeswax, they burned dimly and unevenly, requiring careful attention to avoid fire. Their cost also limited usage, particularly for the lower classes. For most households, this meant extinguishing lights shortly after the evening meal, naturally encouraging first sleep. The wakeful interlude was thus framed by the availability of modest illumination, enough for reading, prayer, or household tasks, but not sufficient to mimic daylight or extend activity indefinitely. Oil lamps, another incremental advancement, allowed for slightly brighter and more consistent light. In wealthier households, these lamps enabled longer wakeful periods during the night, allowing individuals to read, write, or engage in leisure activities with greater comfort. However, even these improvements could not eliminate the natural boundaries of darkness. People remained tied to the cycles of day and night, and the dual sleep pattern remained culturally ingrained. Clocks and timekeeping devices introduced another layer of influence. Before mechanical clocks became common, people measured time by natural cues: sunrise, sunset, the position of the sun or moon, and seasonal changes. The advent of domestic clocks, first in grand homes and later in modest households, allowed people to schedule their first and second sleep with greater precision. Middle-of-the-night wakefulness could be timed for specific tasks, prayers, or household duties, reinforcing the structure of dual sleep even as technology made measurement of time more exact. Fireplaces and stoves also influenced nocturnal activity. Central hearths provided warmth and light, extending the period during which families could engage in evening tasks before first sleep. Yet once the fire burned low or was extinguished, darkness encouraged rest. The management of heat, light, and fuel all contributed to the shaping of first and second sleep, as households balanced comfort, safety, and economy. Even mundane household devices played a role. Water pumps, spinning wheels, and food preparation tools required quiet attention during the night. Middle-of-the-night wakefulness was often the optimal time for using these devices without disturbing others. The dual sleep pattern allowed households to organize chores efficiently, ensuring that necessary tasks could be accomplished while still adhering to restorative sleep cycles. Street lighting, when introduced in towns and cities, began to challenge the traditional nocturnal rhythm. Gas lamps, and later oil lamps on streets, extended activity in public spaces, encouraging social gatherings, trade, and travel after dark. Wealthier citizens might stay awake longer for social or commercial purposes, while lower-income residents remained more constrained by darkness. This gradual extension of night activity began to erode the natural boundaries of first and second sleep. But the transition was slow, and for many households, Traditional dual sleep persisted well into the 18th century. The introduction of printed materials also influenced nocturnal life. Books, pamphlets, and newspapers provided intellectual and entertainment opportunities during the wakeful interval. Candlelight allowed reading and writing, particularly for the literate elite, giving the middle-of-the-night hours a productive or reflective function. Scholars, writers, and students embraced this time for study, correspondence, and creative work, further embedding dual sleep as a culturally normative practice. Urbanization played a complementary role. In towns and cities, the demands of trade, labor, and community activity created new pressures on sleep. Some city dwellers began to consolidate their sleep, shortening the interval between first and second sleep, or even merging it into a single uninterrupted rest. Yet historical records suggest that the dual sleep pattern remained common in rural areas, where the cycles of labor and natural light dictated behavior more strictly. The contrast between urban and rural sleep habits illustrates how environmental and technological factors began to shape human rest patterns differently across social and geographic contexts. Religious and cultural traditions continued to reinforce dual sleep despite technological advances. Night prayers, vigils, and rituals remained common, aligning closely with the wakeful period. Even as households gained access to brighter and longer-lasting light, cultural norms, spiritual expectations, and the biological need for restorative rest preserved the practice of first and second sleep for centuries. Medical understanding, too, began to respond to changing technology. Physicians of the 17th and 18th centuries observed the effects of artificial light on sleep, noting that extended wakefulness could interfere with digestion, circulation, and mental health. While some elites experimented with extended nighttime activity, the prevailing view among medical practitioners emphasized the natural dual sleep cycle as optimal for health, warning against late-night indulgence in reading, work, or socializing that ignored the body's natural rhythms. Thus, technology both enabled and challenged the traditional dual sleep pattern. Lighting extended wakefulness, clocks provided precision, and household devices facilitated nocturnal labor. Yet even as these tools offered convenience and possibility, the physiological, cultural, and social structures supporting first and second sleep persisted. People adapted these innovations within the framework of natural rhythms, integrating them into a lifestyle that valued balance between rest, reflection, labor, and social obligation. The night, in the centuries before electric light, was more than a span of rest. It was a threshold into a world of mystery, imagination, and unseen forces. During the quiet hours between first and second sleep, people often turned their attention to dreams, omens, and supernatural interpretations. Folklore was deeply intertwined with the dual sleep pattern, and middle-of-the-night wakefulness was regarded as a time when the veil between the natural and spiritual realms was thinnest. Dreams held particular significance during this interval. Unlike the modern view of dreams as random or trivial, people of earlier centuries considered them meaningful, sometimes prophetic. Waking after first sleep, individuals often recorded or reflected upon their dreams, believing that these nocturnal visions contained messages about health, fortune, and morality. In some cases, families would consult local wise women, herbalists, or clergy to interpret dreams and provide guidance. Scholars have noted that early modern European literature abounds with references to such dream interpretation, highlighting the importance of these quiet hours for spiritual and personal insight. Beyond dreams, superstitions flourished in the middle-of-the-night interlude. The hours between first and second sleep were thought to be a time when spirits, ghosts, and other supernatural entities were most active. In rural villages, parents warned children against wandering in the dark, not only because of physical danger, but because of the spirits that were said to roam the night. Bedside prayers and protective charms were commonly used to guard against these forces. Candles left burning, salt sprinkled in doorways, and holy water placed at thresholds were all part of the ritual measures families took to secure safety during these liminal hours. Stories and oral traditions were also shared in the glow of candlelight during middle-of-the-night wakefulness. Villagers would tell tales of mysterious apparitions, enchanted forests, and mythical creatures, passing down cultural knowledge and communal values through narrative. These stories served multiple purposes. They entertained, educated, and reinforced social norms. They also provided a framework for understanding the unknown, offering explanations for dreams, illnesses, and misfortune that struck in the night. The storytelling culture of this era was inseparable from the structure of dual sleep, as the hours of wakefulness provided both the opportunity and the quiet environment needed for such narratives to flourish. Religious observance further reinforced the spiritual significance of middle-of-the-night activity. The period between first and second sleep was often a time for prayer, meditation, or reflection. Monastic communities in particular adhered to canonical hours, rising during the night for matins or vigils. Laypeople, influenced by these religious rhythms, might also rise to pray, read devotional texts, or reflect quietly on personal sins and virtues. In some accounts, the quiet of this interval was seen as a time when divine inspiration or revelation was more readily received, making the night a spiritually potent realm rather than merely a time of rest. Superstition also played a practical role in daily life. For example, farmers might interpret nocturnal animal sounds as omens related to weather, crop success, or livestock health. A fox yipping near the barn could indicate an approaching storm, while the restless behavior of hens might be seen as signaling misfortune. Because the hours between first and second sleep were spent awake, people were more attuned to these signs and better able to act upon them. In this way, folklore, superstition, and practical knowledge were inseparable, guiding both action and belief in communities structured around natural cycles of light and darkness. In addition to dreams and superstition, the period of wakefulness between sleeps allowed for personal reflection and moral contemplation. Individuals often used the time to consider their conduct, resolve disputes, or plan the next day's work. Diaries and personal writings from the 17th and 18th centuries show that middle-of-the-night wakefulness was a natural context for introspection. People wrote letters, copied texts, or reflected on religious teachings, taking advantage of the quiet hours when the household and the broader village were still. Health practices during this wakeful period were also noteworthy. Herbal remedies and warm drinks were prepared to aid digestion or soothe aches, as the body's metabolic processes were still active. Gentle stretching or light chores might be performed to relieve discomfort caused by sleeping in close quarters or on hard beds. The understanding of health was holistic, integrating physical, spiritual, and mental well-being, and the structured division of sleep allowed people to attend to all three aspects. Literature and legal records from this era provide additional evidence of the social recognition of dual sleep. Court cases, diaries, and letters often casually mention people waking in the middle of the night without implying illness or weakness. Poets and writers described nighttime reflection and creativity, and even artists sometimes worked in the dim hours, taking advantage of the quiet to focus without interruption. This reinforces the idea that first and second sleep were culturally normative, embedded in the daily rhythm, and that middle-of-the-night wakefulness was an accepted and even valued part of life. Gender roles also influenced nighttime activities. Women, responsible for household management, often used the interlude to check on children, mend clothing, or prepare simple meals for the following day. Men might focus on tasks related to livestock, farm equipment, or preparation for travel or labor. These divisions were practical, ensuring that essential duties could be addressed without interfering with the restorative phases of sleep. Yet both men and women shared the spiritual and reflective aspects of the middle-of-the-night hours, uniting households in a shared experience that combined rest, labor, and contemplation. The dual sleep pattern also shaped social relationships beyond the household. In some villages, neighbors would rise quietly to engage in small cooperative tasks or offer assistance to one another, such as tending to animals or resolving urgent disputes. While modern societies rarely acknowledge nighttime as a space for communal interaction, pre-electric communities leveraged this period for social cohesion, reinforcing bonds and responsibilities within the community. As artificial lighting gradually became more accessible in the later centuries, these traditions began to shift. The rhythm of first and second sleep slowly eroded under the influence of extended work hours, social gatherings, and technological innovation. Yet until that point, the night was lived fully. A time of dreams, reflection, superstition, prayer, and practical activity. It was a structured space where people balanced the spiritual, social, and biological aspects of life, all in harmony with the natural cycle of light and darkness. In Part 4, we will examine how labor, trade, and occupational demands influence the timing of first and second sleep, exploring how different professions, from farmers and artisans to merchants and scholars, adapted the dual sleep pattern to meet the demands of their work and social obligations. This will illuminate the intricate interplay between human activity, natural rhythms, and cultural expectations that sustained this forgotten sleep tradition. Work was at the heart of daily life long before the hum of electricity disrupted natural rhythms. People's sleep patterns, including the first and second sleep, were closely aligned with the demands of their occupations, the seasons, and the cycle of daylight. The dual sleep system was practical, allowing humans to balance rest, labor, and social responsibilities while staying attuned to the natural world. In agricultural societies, which comprised the majority of European populations, labor dictated when sleep began and ended. Farmers, for example, rose early with the first light of dawn to tend fields, livestock, and seasonal crops. Their nights, therefore, were carefully structured. After completing evening chores, preparing the household for the night, and sharing the evening meal, they would retire for the first sleep. This initial rest period ensured their bodies could recover from the day's exertions. Middle-of-the-night wakefulness allowed them to perform small but essential tasks, checking the hearth, ensuring animals were secure, or inspecting stored grains and vegetables for spoilage. The second sleep would then follow, replenishing energy and preparing them to meet the physical demands of another day. Artisans, craftsmen, and laborers in towns had similar, yet slightly more flexible patterns. Blacksmiths, weavers, coopers, and cobblers organized their nights around both daylight and the rhythm of their work. Shops and workshops often closed at dusk, and after a first sleep, some artisans would rise for quiet tasks, maintenance, or planning the next day's work. In guild-based economies, apprentices and masters alike followed schedules that respected the natural cycles of night, while allowing for occasional nocturnal labor when necessary. This structure helped ensure the continuity of production without compromising the restorative benefits of divided sleep. Merchants and traders faced different pressures, particularly those involved in long-distance commerce. While local merchants might adjust their dual sleep patterns to the rhythms of the town market or trading hours, those responsible for shipping goods, managing caravans, or coordinating distant trade networks sometimes had to extend wakefulness beyond the typical middle-of-the-night period. Yet even in these cases, historical accounts suggest that first and second sleep were still observed, albeit adjusted for travel schedules, seasonal variations, or economic necessity. The structure of sleep provided a reliable framework, anchoring human activity even amidst the unpredictable demands of commerce. Scholars, clerics, and literate elites also maintained the rhythm of dual sleep, though their wakeful interludes often took on intellectual or spiritual purposes. Monks, for example, adhered to the canonical hours, rising during the night for matins or vigils, then returning to bed for second sleep before sunrise. University students and scholars in urban centers might spend the middle-of-the-night hours reading, copying texts, or contemplating philosophical questions. In such cases, the dual sleep pattern allowed intellectual pursuits to coexist with the physical need for rest, highlighting how first and second sleep was not merely a biological phenomenon, but a socially and culturally embedded practice. Seasonality continued to influence occupational adjustments. Winter months, with longer nights, allowed extended first and second sleep, giving workers time to recover from labor-intensive harvests or manage indoor tasks such as repairing tools, mending clothing, or preparing for the next planting season. Summer nights, by contrast, were shorter, often requiring workers to condense sleep periods or adjust wakeful interludes to accommodate longer daylight hours devoted to field work or market activities. The dual sleep pattern, flexible and responsive, reflected an intricate balance between human physiology and the environmental constraints of pre-industrial life. Domestic responsibilities were another factor shaping nocturnal behavior. Women, tasked with maintaining the household, often used the wakeful period between sleeps to tend fires, clean, or prepare meals for the next day. Caring for children, particularly infants, was a recurring nighttime duty, requiring mothers to rise from first sleep to feed or soothe the young before returning to second sleep. The communal nature of household life, often with multiple generations under one roof, meant that first and second sleep was not always solitary. The middle-of-the-night hours could involve collaboration, quiet coordination, and mutual support within families. The structure of sleep also intersected with social and economic hierarchies. Wealthier households, with more resources for lighting and comfort, might extend the wakeful period with candlelight, allowing for reading, music, or conversation. Poorer households, limited by scarce lighting and cramped living spaces, often adhered more strictly to the natural cycles of light and dark, relying on first and second sleep to manage physical labor and family care efficiently. Regardless of social class, however, dual sleep remained a normative rhythm, adapted to human needs and environmental realities. Occupational dangers and emergencies could also dictate modifications to the sleep schedule. Shepherds, for instance, who oversaw flocks at night, sometimes rose during first or second sleep to guard against predators or thieves. Fire watchers, night guards, and other individuals with protective duties similarly divided their rest, using the dual sleep pattern to remain alert while still ensuring adequate rest. Even in these cases, the principle of restorative sleep guided behavior, emphasizing the physiological and social wisdom embedded in the practice. The introduction of new technologies, such as improved lighting, clocks, and mechanized labor, gradually altered these occupational and domestic routines. Yet until the 18th and early 19th centuries, first and second sleep remained widely observed. Historical diaries, legal records, and literary accounts indicate that people rose naturally in the middle of the night, performing work, prayer, or reflection, and then returned to bed, demonstrating a cultural understanding of sleep that balanced productivity, spiritual practice, and health. In essence, the dual sleep pattern was an adaptive strategy, enabling humans to meet the demands of work, family, and community while respecting the natural cycles of light and darkness. Labor shaped the timing and duration of first and second sleep, but these periods of rest and wakefulness were also socially sanctioned, culturally meaningful, and biologically restorative. Understanding how occupations influenced nocturnal life provides insight into the broader organization of society before electricity, showing that sleep was not merely a private, biological function, but a socially embedded, functional, and adaptive practice. Long before the glow of electric lights illuminated bedrooms and streets alike, the rhythm of human life followed a much different cadence. In the quiet of medieval Europe, in the rural villages and townships scattered across England, France, and other parts of the continent, people did not experience the uninterrupted, 8-hour sleep we consider normal today. Instead, their nights were divided, structured by the natural cycle of darkness and light, a pattern known as first and second sleep. As evening fell, families would begin preparations for rest not with the flick of a switch or the hum of a lamp, but with simple, deliberate routines shaped by necessity, culture, and the environment. In those times, night arrived early, often soon after sunset, and with it came an enveloping darkness that seemed almost tangible. Without the benefit of artificial illumination, human activity naturally slowed. The concept of a single, unbroken night of sleep was foreign. Instead, there were two distinct periods of slumber, separated by an hour or more of quiet wakefulness. The first sleep, sometimes called dead sleep, would begin shortly after the evening meal. People would undress, extinguish their candles, and settle into the communal or individual beds. In small cottages, beds were shared, sometimes by multiple family members, their bodies aligned closely for warmth. The interiors of these homes were stark, furnished with wooden tables, chairs, and hearths, often without glass windows, so the chill of night and the darkness beyond were felt even within the home. Blankets and furs provided warmth, while the crackling fire, if one still burned, lent both heat and a dim, flickering light. During first sleep, the body would move through the initial cycles of slumber, entering a restorative state. It was common for people to dream during this period, and occasionally in folklore, these dreams were interpreted as messages from the spirit world, portents, or signs of health and fortune. The first sleep could last for several hours, often until the middle of the night, around midnight or slightly later. Then came the period of wakefulness, an interval lasting from 1 to 2 hours, sometimes longer depending on the household and the season. This time was not considered insomnia, nor was it seen as abnormal. In fact, it was a natural and expected part of the nightly cycle. People would rise from their beds, often quietly to avoid disturbing others, and engage in a variety of activities. Some might pray, a ritual deeply embedded in the spiritual life of the era, kneeling by bedside altars, murmuring familiar prayers, or reading sacred texts by candlelight. Others used this time for domestic chores, such as tending to the fire, checking on children, or mending clothes. rural communities, this interlude could also serve social or personal purposes. Lovers might exchange quiet conversations, while parents might feed infants or care for sick family members. The middle of the night was also a period when writers, scholars, and thinkers, those fortunate enough to be literate and have leisure, could contemplate, compose, or read. In some accounts, nocturnal wakefulness was even seen as a moment of heightened creativity or insight, a sacred pause between two states of sleep. Second sleep would follow naturally, a period of slumber similar to the first, though sometimes lighter. During this phase, people might dream again, although the intensity and vividness of dreams could vary. The second sleep would generally carry the sleeper through the remaining hours of darkness until the first light of dawn, when the day's labor and activity would begin anew. In this rhythm, night was not merely a time of rest but a structured, purposeful, and multifaceted experience, one deeply attuned to the environment and to the human body's natural cycles. Historical records, diaries, and literature from the period often reference this dual sleep pattern. Physicians, for example, wrote about the health benefits of first and second sleep, observing that it aligned with the natural rhythms of the body and mind. They noted that interruption of this pattern could lead to fatigue, irritability, and even illness. Writers described waking in the middle of the night as ordinary and unremarkable, a time for reflection, prayer, or household management. Folklore also captures the pattern, mentioning the witching hour, not as a time of terror alone, but as a recognized span of quiet wakefulness during the night. This pattern was not uniform across all regions or cultures. The timing, duration, and cultural interpretation of first and second sleep varied according to latitude, season, occupation, and social class. In colder northern regions, for example, the long nights of winter necessitated adjustments in sleep, while in warmer southern climates, the rhythm might shift with the earlier or later setting of the sun. Occupations also played a role. Farmers, whose labor was dictated by the rising and setting of the sun, adhered closely to the natural night cycle, whereas artisans, merchants, and nobility might have more flexibility, allowing for candles or lamps to extend periods of wakefulness. The introduction of artificial light began to erode this natural pattern, but it was a slow process. Even into the 17th and 18th centuries, people continued to observe two phases of sleep. Candlelight and oil lamps allowed for extended wakefulness, yet the majority still followed the ingrained habits of first and second sleep. Social expectations, religious observances, and the limitations of lighting technology all reinforced the traditional nocturnal schedule. Understanding this sleep pattern gives us insight into the broader rhythm of life before modern technology. Nights were lived fully, not simply endured. The interlude between first and second sleep was a time for reflection, creativity, and quiet labor. Communities were structured around these cycles, with social norms, religious practices, and daily labor all intertwined with the natural ebb and flow of darkness and light. As the understanding of first and second sleep deepened, it becomes clear that seasonal shifts played a crucial role in how people organized their nights. Long before the artificial glow of electric light, humans were intimately tied to the rhythms of nature. In winter months, when nights stretched longer and the sun rose later, the period of darkness could extend for 16 or more hours in northern regions. Families adapted by starting first sleep shortly after the early sunset, often while the sky was still tinged with twilight. During these long nights, the interlude between sleeps could be longer as well, sometimes stretching to 2 or 3 hours, giving people time to engage in tasks that daylight had not permitted or to reflect quietly on their lives. In contrast, summer nights were short, and darkness came later in the evening. The duration of first sleep was shorter, and second sleep followed more quickly. Seasonal variations also influenced the types of activities undertaken during the middle-of-the-night wakeful period. In the harvest season, for instance, farmers might wake to check on livestock or ensure that stored crops remained safe from damp or pests. In fishing communities, fishermen could rise to prepare their nets or equipment for the early morning hours. These adjustments demonstrate how first and second sleep were not rigid structures, but flexible patterns that adapted to human needs and environmental conditions. Social and cultural rituals were equally intertwined with nocturnal cycles. Religious practices, particularly in Christian Europe, often dictated periods of nighttime prayer. Canonical hours, such as matins or vigils, encouraged pious individuals to rise during the night for spiritual reflection. Even those outside strict monastic life were influenced by these customs, creating a social expectation that quiet wakefulness during the night was natural, if not spiritually advantageous. During these hours, individuals might meditate, write letters, or read sacred texts by candlelight, embracing the calm that the world outside their homes had surrendered to darkness. Communities were often attuned to these nighttime rhythms as well. Towns and villages were quieter than modern urban areas, with the absence of street lamps and traffic amplifying the sense of night as a period of reflection and stillness. Neighbors knew not to disturb one another during these hours. Courtyards, streets, and alleys remained mostly empty, and even the sounds of nature, crickets, owls, and the occasional rustle of a nocturnal animal became part of the soundtrack of wakefulness between first and second sleep. The quiet was almost sacred, providing a temporal space for thought, prayer, and sometimes clandestine activity. For many families, the interlude between sleeps also allowed for personal or intimate moments. Historical accounts suggest that couples often used this quiet period to talk, share concerns, or spend time together away from the demands of daily labor. It was a socially sanctioned time for reflection, contemplation, and even romance, embedded in the fabric of life before modern illumination disrupted natural sleep patterns. In addition, parents could attend to children who had woken during the night, nursing infants or comforting frightened toddlers. Because families were typically large and homes shared among multiple generations, the middle-of-the-night hours were often communal, a shared experience that bound households together in the rhythm of night. Health and medical understanding of sleep during this era further reinforced the two-sleep pattern. Physicians observed that waking during the night was normal and even beneficial. Treatises on health advised people not to fight the natural cycles of rest, noting that this wakefulness allowed the body to process digestion, align with natural circadian rhythms, and relieve mental tension. Insomnia was recognized only when the expected middle-of-the-night waking did not end naturally in a second sleep, or when restlessness persisted into daylight hours. Remedies for sleeplessness included herbal teas, warm baths, or light reading, always respecting the body's natural inclination toward dual slumber. Literature from the period provides additional evidence of this cultural understanding. Diaries, letters, and chronicles frequently mention waking in the middle of the night as an ordinary event. Writers such as Robert Burton in The Anatomy of Melancholy and various English diarists of the 17th century comment casually on rising from bed to pray, reflect, or tend to domestic matters before returning to sleep. Their writings illustrate a society in which middle-of-the-night wakefulness was expected, neither alarming nor disruptive, but a routine embedded in the larger framework of daily life. Even recreational activity occurred during this wakeful period, though modest and measured by today's standards. Some households would engage in quiet games, storytelling, or music played softly to avoid disturbing others. Candlelight, carefully rationed, permitted reading, writing, or other solitary pastimes. This interval was, in essence, a liminal time, neither fully day nor fully night, a threshold where ordinary tasks gave way to contemplation, and where the rhythm of life expanded to encompass the entire span of darkness, rather than treating it solely as a period of inactivity. Technological limitations shaped these patterns as well. Candles, rushlights, and oil lamps provided dim, short-lived illumination. People had to manage resources carefully, extinguishing lights early in first sleep, and using the middle-of-the-night wakeful hours sparingly. Unlike today, where electricity allows for extended nighttime activity, pre-electric households were constrained by the availability and expense of light. This limitation naturally encouraged a pattern of sleep divided into two segments, with wakefulness nestled between them in a deliberate and measured fashion. Furthermore, the design and construction of homes contributed to the experience of dual sleep. Rooms were generally small, often with low ceilings, minimal insulation, and simple furnishings. Beds were communal or shared, emphasizing warmth and resource efficiency. The architecture and layout of these spaces encouraged early rest, a quiet interlude during the night, and a return to sleep when the natural cues of darkness and comfort signaled it was time. In this way, human behavior, health, architecture, and social life were all interwoven with the pattern of first and second sleep. By examining these factors, seasonal changes, social and religious practices, domestic life, and technological constraints, it becomes evident that dual sleep was not an anomaly but an adaptation. It reflected a society in harmony with natural cycles, a lifestyle shaped by the environment, culture, and human biology. Understanding this rhythm sheds light on the fundamental ways humans interacted with time, darkness, and their own bodies, offering a stark contrast to the modern expectation of uninterrupted 8-hour slumber. In the next part, we will delve into how folklore, superstition, and storytelling were intertwined with first and second sleep. This will include how people interpreted dreams, ghosts, and supernatural phenomena during the quiet hours of wakefulness, further demonstrating that the night was not only a period of rest, but a realm of imagination, ritual, and cultural significance. Modern research has begun to illuminate what our ancestors already knew intuitively. The dual sleep pattern was not only culturally significant, but also physiologically and psychologically beneficial. First and second sleep provided a natural rhythm that aligned with the human circadian cycle, supported memory consolidation, emotional processing, and physical restoration, and allowed for quiet reflection and problem-solving during the night. The biological foundation of divided sleep lies in the body's circadian rhythms, which respond to the cycles of light and dark. Before artificial lighting, humans were highly attuned to these natural cues. After a long first sleep, the body's core temperature would drop slightly. Hormones like melatonin and cortisol would fluctuate, and the mind would naturally awaken for a brief period. This wakeful interval allowed individuals to process experiences, reflect, and even engage in light activity, before returning to a second sleep that completed the restorative process. Sleep scientists today recognize that waking in the middle of the night is not necessarily a sign of insomnia, but can be a normal and healthy pattern. Historical dual sleep allowed the brain to enter and exit different stages of sleep, including REM, rapid eye movement, and deep slow-wave sleep, in ways that supported memory and learning. The wakeful period between first and second sleep may have allowed the brain to consolidate new information, reflect on challenges, and process emotional experiences without interference from ongoing daily distractions. Emotional regulation was another benefit of dual sleep. Waking in the middle of the night offered a quiet space for reflection, meditation, and problem-solving. Diaries and letters from the pre-electric era reveal that people often spent this time considering personal or household challenges, planning for upcoming labor, or engaging in prayer and contemplation. Modern psychology suggests that such reflective wakefulness can reduce stress, improve emotional balance, and enhance creativity, supporting the idea that first and second sleep was not only biologically sound but psychologically restorative. Memory consolidation is closely tied to sleep architecture, and divided sleep may have been particularly advantageous in this regard. First sleep allowed the brain to encode and process daytime experiences, while the wakeful interval provided a conscious space for reflection. Second sleep then reinforced these neural connections, embedding learning and experience more effectively. This natural cycle may explain why historical populations, despite the lack of modern education systems or technology, were able to manage complex agricultural, domestic, and communal tasks efficiently. Physical health was also supported by dual sleep. During first sleep, the body engaged in cellular repair, metabolic regulation, and immune function. The wakeful interval provided an opportunity for light activity, feeding infants, tending animals, performing gentle chores that maintained circulation and prevented stiffness. Returning to second sleep allowed further restoration, ensuring that both mind and body received sufficient rest in a structured, cyclical pattern. In contrast, modern consolidated sleep, though convenient for industrial schedules, sometimes limits the opportunity for brief natural wakefulness that could support cognitive and physical function. Dreams, which were given special attention during the middle-of-the-night wakefulness, also had physiological and psychological significance. REM sleep, which is associated with vivid dreaming, often peaks during the latter half of a sleep cycle. Historical reports suggest that people used their wakeful intervals to reflect on or interpret dreams, a practice that modern neuroscience supports as beneficial for emotional processing and memory integration. In essence, the dual sleep pattern provided a structured framework for engaging with both conscious and subconscious thought processes, integrating reflection with physiological restoration. Sleep fragmentation, often considered problematic in modern medicine, was in fact a natural and adaptive rhythm in pre-electric societies. The pause between first and second sleep allowed the mind and body to transition naturally between stages of rest and wakefulness. Unlike insomnia caused by stress, noise, or artificial light, this structured wakefulness was intentional and culturally reinforced, demonstrating how human physiology can thrive under conditions that modern society often labels as disrupted. Creativity and problem-solving were also enhanced by dual sleep. Writers, artists, and thinkers of the pre-electric era often used the wakeful period to develop ideas, write, or compose music. Modern studies confirm that brief periods of wakefulness during the night can enhance cognitive flexibility, insight, and the generation of novel solutions. By aligning with natural circadian and ultradian rhythms, first and second sleep provided an environment conducive to intellectual and artistic output, blending rest with reflective activity in a balanced cycle. Social and spiritual dimensions were reinforced by physiological patterns. Waking between first and second sleep allowed for prayer, household coordination, and community observation, all of which contributed to emotional resilience and social cohesion. By integrating biological rhythms with cultural and social practices, dual sleep created a holistic system that supported human well-being in multiple dimensions: physical, emotional, cognitive, and social. As industrialization, artificial lighting, and urbanization took hold, the centuries-old rhythm of first and second sleep gradually disappeared. What had been a natural, culturally reinforced, and physiologically beneficial pattern became increasingly rare. The consequences of this shift extended far beyond simple changes in nightly routine. They reshaped physical health, mental well-being, social life, and even creativity. One of the most immediate effects was an increase in sleep-related stress and insomnia. People accustomed to a dual sleep pattern suddenly faced long stretches of uninterrupted sleep, often struggling to adjust to the new societal expectation. Whereas waking naturally in the middle of the night had been normal and restorative, the absence of this structured wakeful interval left some individuals restless, frustrated, or anxious when they awoke briefly in the night. Modern insomnia, in many ways, mirrors the natural wakefulness that once defined first and second sleep, illustrating how cultural shifts can pathologize normal biological rhythms. The decline of dual sleep also affected cognitive and emotional functioning. Pre-electric societies benefited from the reflective and problem-solving period between first and second sleep. Waking in the middle of the night offered a quiet, undisturbed time to plan, meditate, or creatively engage with ideas. With the loss of this interval, people were deprived of a natural cognitive and emotional reset, potentially contributing to mental fatigue, reduced creativity, and diminished emotional regulation. Historical accounts suggest that middle-of-the-night reflection enhanced memory, emotional processing, and intellectual activity, functions that modern consolidated sleep may not fully replicate. Social life was similarly altered. Households that once coordinated chores, prayers, and family care around dual sleep now had to compress these activities into daytime hours. Women, who had used the wakeful interval to care for children, manage fires, and prepare for the day ahead, faced increasing pressure to perform all duties before or after modern consolidated sleep. Community vigilance, once maintained by shared wakefulness during the night, diminished as fewer people were awake at the same time, reducing the informal surveillance and cooperation that had helped maintain safety and order in villages and towns. Cultural and spiritual practices were also affected. Middle-of-the-night prayers, vigils, and reflection, which had been integral to household and personal life, gradually fell out of habit. Religious observances adapted to the demands of daytime schedules, losing the intimate, quiet period that had once fostered contemplation, insight, and spiritual resilience. Literary accounts and diaries from the 19th century note a sense of loss, describing middle-of-the-night wakefulness as a relic, a forgotten rhythm now considered an oddity rather than a normal part of life. Physiologically, the loss of dual sleep disrupted natural circadian rhythms. Research in modern sleep science shows that humans evolved to wake briefly during the night. The removal of this pattern can affect hormone regulation, cognitive function, and emotional stability. Cortisol, melatonin, and other sleep-related hormones follow rhythms that are better accommodated by divided sleep. By consolidating sleep into a single block, society inadvertently challenged the body's natural cycles, leading to increased fatigue, stress, and susceptibility to illness. Occupational life was another area of transformation. Industrial labor demanded early wake times and long, continuous activity during daylight hours. Workers adapted by eliminating the middle-of-the-night wakeful period, often at the expense of both cognitive function and emotional health. Rural communities, which had preserved dual sleep longer, eventually faced the same pressures as urbanization expanded, bringing work schedules, schooling, and economic demands into alignment with continuous sleep rather than divided rest. The cultural imagination around sleep shifted as well. Waking in the night, once considered normal and valuable, became stigmatized. People who experienced natural nocturnal wakefulness were often labeled insomniacs, anxious, or unhealthy. The collective understanding of sleep was reshaped. Uninterrupted sleep was equated with modernity, efficiency, and productivity, while dual sleep was relegated to folklore, history books, or eccentric personal habits. Interestingly, the decline of dual sleep also influenced creativity and problem-solving. Where previous generations used the quiet, reflective hours between sleeps to write, compose music, or craft ideas, modern consolidated sleep left less opportunity for uninterrupted mental incubation. While daytime creativity thrived in new contexts, the nocturnal window that had once nurtured artistic insight disappeared, altering the relationship between sleep, cognition, and cultural production. Health, productivity, and lifestyle were all subtly reshaped. Dual sleep had allowed for restorative cycles of deep and REM sleep, physical activity during wakefulness, and cognitive processing. Consolidated sleep, while more compatible with industrial schedules, failed to replicate all these benefits, leading to subtle deficits in memory, mood, and emotional resilience. Modern society adapted, but at a cost. A disconnection from natural cycles, a loss of reflective nocturnal time, and an increased reliance on artificial light and structured schedules to regulate activity. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, researchers, historians, and sleep scientists began to rediscover the forgotten pattern of first and second sleep. What had once been the normal rhythm of human life before electricity was now being studied for its potential benefits. As modern society faced rising rates of insomnia, stress, and disrupted circadian rhythms. This revival of segmented sleep brought attention to both the historical wisdom and the physiological advantages of the dual sleep pattern. Historical research played a central role in this rediscovery. Scholars combed through diaries, letters, and literature from the 17th and 18th centuries, documenting accounts of waking after first sleep to pray, reflect, perform chores, or engage in creative work. Writers such as Roger Eckertz, in his seminal studies, highlighted the prevalence of middle-of-the-night wakefulness and its cultural normalization. By demonstrating that waking in the night was not abnormal but historically common, these studies challenged modern assumptions about insomnia and consolidated sleep. Sleep scientists and chronobiologists began conducting controlled experiments to examine the benefits of segmented sleep. Volunteers were allowed to sleep in 2 blocks, separated by a period of quiet wakefulness, while researchers monitored brain activity, hormone levels, cognitive function, and emotional processing. Results consistently showed that dual sleep could improve memory consolidation, enhance problem solving, reduce stress, and support emotional regulation. Participants often reported a sense of creativity and mental clarity during the wakeful interlude, echoing historical accounts of reflection, writing, and planning. The wakeful period between first and second sleep proved particularly valuable. Modern studies suggest that this interval allows the mind to process experiences, integrate memories, and reflect on challenges without the distractions of daytime activity. It creates a natural window for contemplation, problem solving, and even mindfulness practices, aligning closely with the ways pre-electric societies used this time for prayer, journaling, and household management. By reconnecting with this rhythm, modern individuals can harness a historically validated method for enhancing cognitive and emotional well-being. Cultural interest in dual sleep also inspired practical experimentation. Some wellness communities began promoting segmented sleep schedules as a tool for improving focus, creativity, and personal reflection. Enthusiasts structured their evenings around a first sleep of 3 to 4 hours, a wakeful interval for reading, meditation, or gentle chores, followed by a second sleep to complete rest. Reports suggest that this approach can reduce nighttime anxiety, improve sleep quality, and provide a natural alignment with circadian rhythms, particularly in the absence of artificial light or electronic distractions. Artists, writers, and thinkers have also embraced segmented sleep experimentally. The quiet hours between sleeps offer uninterrupted time for creative activity, free from the interruptions of daytime life. Musicians, authors, and designers have used this period for writing, composing, or brainstorming, echoing the practices of pre-electric societies where first and second sleep created space for reflection, artistry, and problem solving. The historical continuity of this pattern underscores its adaptive value. Humans are naturally suited to wakeful periods during the night. Even in contemporary sleep medicine, there is growing recognition that waking briefly during the night is not necessarily pathological. Sleep specialists now acknowledge that intermittent nocturnal wakefulness can be normal, and that forcing uninterrupted sleep can sometimes exacerbate insomnia or anxiety. Understanding the historical context of dual sleep helps both clinicians and individuals reframe these experiences as natural, potentially beneficial, and adaptive rather than a sign of disorder. Technology, paradoxically, is both a challenge and an enabler for segmented sleep today. Artificial light and electronic devices disrupt circadian rhythms, making the wakeful interlude more difficult or less restorative. However, deliberate control of lighting, digital habits, and bedtime routines can recreate conditions favorable for first and second sleep. Dim lighting, reduced screen exposure, and structured quiet activities allow modern individuals to experiment with segmented sleep safely, blending historical wisdom with contemporary knowledge. The revival of segmented sleep also intersects with mindfulness, meditation, and wellness practices. The middle-of-the-night interval provides a natural opportunity for introspection, journaling, and spiritual reflection. Many modern practitioners report heightened focus, emotional clarity, and creative inspiration during this period, mirroring the experiences documented in historical diaries and letters. In this way, first and second sleep offers more than rest. It reconnects humans with both physiological rhythms and cultural practices that have been lost over centuries. While first and second sleep is often discussed in the context of pre-industrial Europe, evidence suggests that segmented sleep was not unique to Western societies. Across the globe, human populations developed similar nocturnal rhythms, shaped by natural light, labor demands, and cultural practices. Understanding these cross-cultural perspectives provides insight into the universality of dual sleep and highlights lessons for contemporary sleep science. In East Asia, Historical accounts indicate that people followed a nocturnal pattern aligned with natural cycles. In Japan and China, pre-modern households often divided sleep into two phases, particularly in rural areas where agricultural labor dictated early rising and evening rest. Records from the Edo period in Japan describe middle-of-the-night wakefulness used for household chores, meditation, or quiet reflection, echoing European practices. These wakeful intervals were socially accepted and integrated into family life, demonstrating that dual sleep was adaptive in agrarian societies worldwide. Indigenous communities in North America and other regions also show evidence of segmented or polyphasic sleep patterns. Oral histories, anthropological observations, and ethnographic studies reveal that many groups rose briefly during the night to tend fires, guard against predators, care for children, or engage in spiritual rituals. These wakeful periods were not seen as disruptions, but as necessary and functional parts of nightly life, integrated with both survival and cultural practice. For example, among Plains tribes, nighttime vigilance often coincided with natural pauses in sleep, ensuring the safety of both family and livestock while maintaining restorative rest. African societies, particularly in rural and pastoralist communities, exhibited similar practices. The demands of protecting livestock, managing communal tasks, and navigating long nights led to naturally segmented sleep patterns. Anthropologists have documented periods of middle-of-the-night activity for cooking, tending fires, or communal planning, showing that first and second sleep was an adaptive and practical response to environmental and social conditions rather than a culturally arbitrary habit. Even in the Arctic and other extreme latitudes, where daylight and darkness vary dramatically across the year, people adapted sleep in flexible, segmented patterns. Indigenous communities in Greenland, Alaska, and northern Canada relied on short naps during the day and wakeful intervals at night during winter months, balancing sleep, work, and survival needs. These examples highlight the plasticity of human sleep behavior and the universality of adapting rest to environmental cues and social obligations. Cross-cultural evidence also suggests that segmented sleep was not limited to agrarian or survival contexts. Across societies, middle-of-the-night wakefulness provided opportunities for spiritual, creative, and social engagement. In Polynesian cultures, for instance, night hours were used for storytelling, music, and navigation planning. In South American communities, rituals and quiet reflection often occurred during the wakeful interval, demonstrating that dual sleep served multiple functions: biological, social, and cultural. These global patterns reinforce the idea that segmented sleep is a natural human behavior, shaped by evolutionary pressures and environmental demands. The widespread prevalence of dual sleep across continents and cultures suggests that waking in the middle of the night is not a pathological anomaly, but a deeply embedded aspect of human biology. It highlights the adaptability of human sleep, showing that modern consolidated sleep is a relatively recent cultural innovation, rather than an inherent biological necessity. Contemporary sleep researchers and historians argue that the loss of first and second sleep in industrialized societies disconnects people from these natural rhythms. By studying cross-cultural practices, modern science gains insight into the benefits of flexible, segmented sleep. These include improved cognitive function, emotional regulation, creativity, and social coordination. Advantages that our ancestors exploited, and that may still be accessible today if we intentionally reintroduce structured wakefulness into our nights. First and second sleep was more than a physiological rhythm. It was deeply woven into the cultural and spiritual fabric of pre-electric societies. Literature, art, folklore, and religious practice all reflect the importance of middle-of-the-night wakefulness, showing that dual sleep was as much a cultural institution as it was a biological pattern. In literature, references to segmented sleep abound. 17th and 18th century writers, poets, and essayists often described waking after first sleep as a natural and contemplative period. Samuel Pepys, for example, mentions waking in the middle of the night to write letters or reflect on daily events, framing these hours as productive and meaningful. Robert Burton, in The Anatomy of Melancholy, suggests that waking during the night can be a time for reflection, meditation, and problem-solving. These literary accounts present dual sleep as an integrated aspect of life, highlighting its utility, emotional resonance, and social acceptability. Folklore and storytelling also preserve the cultural significance of first and second sleep. Tales of spirits, night visitors, and supernatural experiences often occur during the wakeful hours between sleeps. Storytellers capitalized on this liminal period, weaving narratives that were both entertaining and instructive. The cultural imagination treated this time as a threshold, a space between worlds where ordinary life paused and extraordinary events could occur. Such narratives reinforced the societal recognition of the wakeful interval as special, meaningful, and culturally sanctioned. Religious practice frequently intersected with dual sleep. Vigils, prayers, and spiritual reflection were often scheduled during the night. In monasteries, clergy would rise after first sleep for meditation, scripture reading, or silent devotion, maintaining a rhythm that connected spiritual practice with the natural cycles of rest. Parishioners in surrounding communities sometimes mirrored these practices at home, using the wakeful period for personal prayer, reflection, or quiet reading. The connection between sleep, wakefulness, and spirituality underscores how dual sleep was embedded in the moral and cultural life of the era. Artistic expression was also influenced by first and second sleep. Painters, composers, and writers sometimes drew inspiration from the quiet hours of night. The solitude of wakefulness offered space for creativity unbroken by the demands of daytime labor. Music, sketches, poetry, and journal entries from pre-electric societies suggest that the wakeful interval was a fertile ground for ideas, problem-solving, and aesthetic exploration. Middle-of-the-night activity thus supported both individual creativity and the broader cultural output of society. Cultural rituals often aligned with the dual sleep rhythm. In rural villages, wakeful periods were used to maintain household order, engage in communal coordination, and prepare for upcoming labor. Seasonal festivals, agricultural cycles, and local observances frequently incorporated elements of middle-of-the-night activity, whether through preparing meals, lighting fires, or conducting spiritual ceremonies. These practices reinforce the integration of dual sleep into daily life, showing that it was both practical and symbolic. Even mundane domestic routines carried cultural significance. Women, for instance, would rise between first and second sleep to tend fires, feed children, or prepare food. These acts were framed not only as functional but also as morally and socially valuable, reflecting care, diligence, and responsibility. In this sense, dual sleep structured both biological rest and cultural performance, linking human health with ethical, familial, and communal obligations. Dreams, too, were culturally significant during the wakeful interval. Middle-of-the-night wakefulness allowed people to reflect on dreams, record them, or interpret their meaning. Dreams were often seen as messages from the divine, omens, or insights into personal and communal life. By integrating dream reflection into the rhythm of first and second sleep, societies created a bridge between biology, imagination, and cultural meaning. The aesthetic and spiritual resonance of dual sleep is further reflected in seasonal and environmental observations. Long winter nights, candle-lit interiors, and quiet village landscapes provided a backdrop that elevated the wakeful interval. Poetry, folklore, and art of the era often emphasized the stillness, clarity, and introspective quality of night, suggesting that the experience of dual sleep shaped both cultural imagination and sensory perception. In essence, first and second sleep was a cultural as well as physiological institution. It provided structure, meaning, and opportunity for reflection, creativity, and spiritual practice. It was a space where human life paused, yet thrived in ways that were invisible to the clock-driven modern world. The decline of dual sleep with industrialization and artificial lighting was not only a biological shift, but a cultural transformation, erasing centuries of nocturnal tradition that had supported health, creativity, and communal cohesion. In recent decades, modern science has begun to take a serious interest in historical sleep patterns, including first and second sleep. Sleep researchers, chronobiologists, and wellness experts are exploring how segmented sleep might inform contemporary approaches to rest, productivity, and emotional well-being. What was once considered an outdated or eccentric habit is now being reevaluated as a potentially optimal rhythm for human physiology. Experimental studies have recreated the conditions of pre-electric sleep. Volunteers are asked to sleep in two phases: a first sleep of 3 to 4 hours, followed by a wakeful period of 1 to 2 hours, and then a second sleep to complete the night. During the wakeful interval, participants engage in quiet reflection, reading, journaling, or meditation. Brain scans, hormone analysis, and cognitive tests reveal that this segmented schedule often improves memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and creative problem-solving compared to traditional consolidated sleep. Participants also report feeling more rested, alert, and emotionally balanced. Sleep therapy practices have begun incorporating segmented sleep strategies for individuals struggling with insomnia or disrupted circadian rhythms. Traditional advice, sleep through the night without interruption, can sometimes worsen stress and anxiety when natural wakefulness occurs. By embracing middle-of-the-night wakefulness as normal, therapists help patients reduce performance pressure around sleep, turning the wakeful period into a restorative and even productive interval. This approach aligns modern medical practice with the historical experience of first and second sleep. Wellness communities have adopted similar strategies. Some practitioners advocate dual sleep schedules to harness the benefits of reflection, meditation, and light activity during the night. In a modern context, this might involve dim lighting, screen-free activities, journaling, or quiet reading. Reports suggest that individuals who experiment with segmented sleep experience enhanced creativity, reduced stress, and a deeper sense of connection to natural rhythms. By reconnecting with this historical pattern, people can reclaim a form of restorative rest that modern lifestyles have largely suppressed. The physiological benefits of segmented sleep continue to be studied. Dividing sleep allows the body to complete multiple cycles of slow wave and REM sleep, supporting memory, emotional processing, and physical restoration. The wakeful interval may act as a natural reset for the nervous system, reducing cognitive fatigue and improving mood. Hormonal regulation, including cortisol and melatonin cycles, aligns more closely with ancestral sleep patterns, potentially offering protection against stress-related disorders common in industrialized societies. Segmented sleep also provides opportunities for creative and reflective activity. Artists, writers, and problem solvers can use the wakeful hours as uninterrupted time for planning, brainstorming, or producing work without daytime distractions. Historical accounts from pre-electric societies show that such nocturnal activity was a common practice, supporting both practical household management and intellectual or artistic pursuits. Modern experiments confirm that this period can stimulate the brain, enhance focus, and improve creative output. In practical terms, adopting segmented sleep requires careful attention to environment and lifestyle. Limiting artificial light, reducing electronic device use, and maintaining a calm, quiet space during the wakeful interval are essential. Aligning sleep with natural circadian cues, while allowing the body to follow its natural rhythm of rest and wakefulness, maximizes the benefits of dual sleep. For many people, a short nap during the day may complement this pattern, especially when adjusting to longer wakeful intervals at night. The historical and scientific rediscovery of first and second sleep challenges the modern assumption that uninterrupted sleep is universally optimal. Instead, it suggests that flexible, segmented sleep schedules may offer a natural, adaptive, and restorative alternative. By studying historical practices and testing them in contemporary contexts, modern science is bridging centuries of knowledge, revealing that what our ancestors knew intuitively can still inform healthier sleep, creativity, and emotional balance today. Those intrigued by the historical practice of first and second sleep, modern life presents both challenges and opportunities for implementing segmented sleep. Unlike pre-electric societies, today's environment is saturated with artificial light, technology, and social obligations that can disrupt natural circadian rhythms. Yet with deliberate planning, it is possible to adopt a dual sleep pattern that aligns with both biological needs and contemporary responsibilities. The first step is to establish a consistent bedtime asterisk. Historical accounts suggest that first sleep typically began soon after dusk, when the body naturally started to wind down. In modern practice, this might mean going to bed earlier than usual, ideally during the window when darkness and reduced activity signal the body to release melatonin and prepare for rest. Creating a dark, quiet sleeping environment helps reinforce this natural cue. After 3 to 4 hours of first sleep a wakeful interval naturally occurs. This period can last anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes and should be treated as a quiet, restorative time rather than a period for stimulating activities like work or screen use. Recommended activities include reading, journaling, light meditation, gentle stretching, or reflection. The key is to engage in calm, low-stress activities that allow the mind to process thoughts and emotions without disrupting the body's readiness for second sleep. Lighting management is critical during this wakeful interval. Dim, warm lights or candles help maintain the body's natural circadian rhythm. Bright, blue-toned lights from screens or overhead bulbs can suppress melatonin, making it harder to return to second sleep. Historically, the limited light of tallow candles or oil lamps guided nocturnal activity without overstimulating the nervous system, a principle that still applies today. Once the wakeful interval concludes, it is time to return to second sleep which typically lasts 2 to 4 hours, completing the restorative cycle. Maintaining consistency in timing helps the body anticipate sleep patterns and reinforces circadian alignment. Some people may combine segmented sleep with short daytime naps to compensate for modern schedules or early work obligations, mimicking the flexible sleep strategies of rural or pre-industrial populations. Segmentation also allows for creativity, reflection, and planning Just as our ancestors used middle-of-the-night wakefulness for household management, prayer, or intellectual work, modern practitioners can dedicate this interval to personal projects or quiet reflection. The key is balance. Using the time productively without overstimulation ensures the body can return to restful second sleep. Practical adaptation requires gradual transition Shifting from consolidated sleep to segmented sleep may initially feel unusual. Experts recommend easing into the schedule over several days or weeks, adjusting both first sleep timing and wakeful interval length. Journaling experiences, tracking energy levels, and monitoring alertness can help refine the pattern and ensure it complements daily responsibilities. Finally, segmented sleep should be contextualized within modern life Unlike historical societies where darkness dictated schedule, contemporary individuals must harmonize dual sleep with work, family, and social obligations. Flexibility is essential. Segmented sleep can be practiced fully on weekends or days off, partially during weekdays, or adapted to include brief naps. The goal is to reconnect with a natural rhythm that promotes rest, creativity, and emotional balance, without disrupting the practical demands of modern society. First and second sleep, once a natural and ubiquitous rhythm of human life, represents a fascinating intersection of biology, culture, and history. Across centuries, societies adapted their rest to the cycles of light and darkness, structuring the night into two restorative phases separated by a wakeful interval. This rhythm supported not only physical health but cognitive function, emotional processing, social coordination, spiritual reflection, and creative expression. Historically, dual sleep was normalized and culturally embedded. Diaries, letters, and literary accounts reveal how ordinary people in Europe and beyond embraced middle-of-the-night wakefulness for chores, childcare, prayer, meditation, reading, and creativity. Rural communities, in particular, integrated these practices into household management and agricultural life, showing that first and second sleep was both practical and meaningful. Cross-cultural evidence from Asia, Africa, the Americas, and the Arctic confirms that segmented sleep was a common human adaptation, reflecting an alignment between physiology and environmental cues. The Industrial Revolution, urbanization, and artificial lighting disrupted these natural rhythms. Factories, schools, and extended urban activity demanded longer, uninterrupted wakefulness during the day and consolidated sleep at night. Cultural narratives shifted. Waking during the night was increasingly viewed as insomnia, inefficiency, or restlessness, rather than a normal physiological pattern. Over time, first and second sleep disappeared from mainstream society, leaving only historical records, folklore, and literary references to document its existence. Modern research has illuminated the biological and psychological benefits of dual sleep. Experiments and chronobiology studies show that dividing sleep into two phases can improve memory consolidation, creativity, emotional regulation, and restorative processes. The wakeful interval acts as a natural reflective period, supporting problem solving, introspection, and mindfulness. Sleep therapy and wellness communities now explore segmented sleep as a tool to reduce insomnia, improve circadian alignment, and foster overall well-being. Practical applications of first and second sleep today are feasible, even in a modern, electrically lit society. By establishing early bedtime, allowing a wakeful period of quiet, low stimulation activity, and returning to second sleep, individuals can reconnect with a natural rhythm that has been lost for centuries. Attention to lighting, environment, and gradual adaptation ensures that dual sleep can coexist with contemporary responsibilities while offering both restorative and reflective benefits. Culturally, first and second sleep reminds us that human rest is not purely physiological. It is social, spiritual, and creative. Historical wakeful intervals were used for prayer, family care, artistic production, and communal coordination. The decline of segmented sleep represents more than a change in hours. It signifies a cultural shift in how humans relate to time, darkness, and the rhythms of daily life. Rediscovering and understanding this pattern allows modern society to reconnect with a rhythm that balances work, rest, and reflection. In conclusion, the story of first and second sleep is a testament to human adaptability and ingenuity. It shows that our ancestors, living in harmony with natural light cycles, developed a sleep pattern that maximized both biological restoration and cultural richness. The decline of this rhythm was driven by industrialization, urbanization, and artificial lighting, yet modern science confirms its ongoing relevance. Segmented sleep offers insights for health, creativity, emotional well-being, and connection to natural rhythms. By studying, experimenting with, and honoring the historical wisdom of first and second sleep, we can reclaim a lost art of living that combines rest, reflection, and productivity. In a world dominated by constant activity and artificial illumination, reconnecting with this forgotten rhythm may provide a path toward deeper sleep, heightened creativity, emotional balance, and a more harmonious relationship with night and darkness. The journey of first and second sleep, from its historical prevalence, cultural significance, decline, and modern rediscovery, reminds us that sleep is not merely a pause from life, but a rich, multidimensional practice capable of shaping mind, body, and society.